Hello and welcome to our Writing Workshop series. This is a collaboration between the North Bay Public Library and members of the North Bay Writers Group. My name is Bethany, and I will be your host for this series. Each episode of this series will focus on different writing topics, including story creation, dialogue, research, and more. Each episode will also feature different hosts from the North Bay Writers Group. In this episode, Jared will talk about creating a great protagonist.
Hello, friends. My name is Jared, and welcome to another Writers Group workshop brought to you by the North Bay Library. Today, I would like to observe the central aspect of a story, the protagonist. We will dive into an in-depth discussion on what it means to be a hero or heroine, as well as give my perspective on what makes an unforgettable leading character. To illustrate my point, I will discuss the concept of morality, the importance of personality, and how relatability, once again, is crucial when creating the leading individual of your tale. True or false? The protagonist is the epitome of good. I would argue that the statement is false. Here's why. The purpose of a main character is not to embody goodness, but to grow and teach the reader the meaning of what good is in their world. The character your story follows often ought to be someone the reader can see themselves being. Link from Legend of Zelda is a great example, in that he is almost abstract, which leads the, in this case, player to project themselves onto the character. In a plethora of tales, we start with a younger character. Harry Potter is 11, Bobby Pendragon is 14, and Bilbo Baggins was, of course, 50, but, he lived to be 131, so technically young? Anyway, these younger ages give the reader time to show their development both as characters and literal people. They almost experience the world at the same time as the reader, and should be written in a realistic evolution from who they began at the beginning of the story as to where they are at the end. In the case of starting with an older character, the reader is essentially asked to generate a connection with the protagonist on the fly. We are placed in a scenario which emphasizes an importance of displaying their position in life, morals, perspectives, and essential character traits in a shorter time span. This is often done with a dialogue sequence, but is not limited to inner dialogue, an event, or even being outright told by the narrator. Morality is the most important concept to focus on, in my opinion. As you see your protagonist interact either with other characters or the world around them, it is crucial that you very clearly display the protagonist's attributes. Are they timid? Do they think of others before themselves? Are they in an oppressive environment, seeking a way out of the drudgery? And what are they going to do to change that? The protagonist does not necessarily have to be good, but they must be human. Their morals, quite often, if you are not writing an anti-hero anyway, should be utilitarian and seek to better the world around them in one way or another. This, of course, is one of the main things that sets them apart from the antagonist. Therefore, morality isn't necessarily pure good in certain terms. Chaotic good, neutral good, lawful good, and all forms of neutral can often lead to intriguing characters. However, you are looking to intrigue the reader and yourself. Therefore, this is what you must bear in mind while establishing your protagonist. Now let's delve into the protagonist and personality. Directly correlating with morality, how can a protagonist be written? Well, the answer, honestly, is not a simple one. If you want an intriguing hero or heroine, some leading characters are bubbly and optimistic, whilst others are serious and or brooding. In a way, a mixture of morals and the story's core message intertwine to dictate the protagonist's personality. You have to think, what is this story about, before developing your protagonist? If the subject matter is consistently serious, it would feel out of place to have the center of your story be an optimistic comedian. generally speaking. You ideally will have the protagonist be the guide or representation of between the world of the one you're creating and the reader themselves. This is to say, the personality and outlook of your main character will dictate the atmosphere of your story. With this in mind, it is up to the writer to make the personality of their protagonist both true to the message as well as entertaining. Their perspective can be relatable, intriguing, thought-provoking, or even tragic. In many cases, hopefully all of the above. A great example of this is Anne of Green Gables. This is a Canadian classic written by Lucy Maud Montgomery. Anne Shirley is a red-haired, freckled-faced orphan adopted by Marilla and Matthew Cuthbert. Mr. and Mrs. Cuthbert own a farm called Green Gables, which is where Anne learns a lot about life's trials, gains a sense of community, and develops into a very good person. It is Anne's determination, compassion, and intelligence that makes her both a strong character as well as a relatable protagonist. Thus, creating a compelling character is paramount to your entire story. Can a tale truly be memorable if the main focus of it is forgettable? Imagine if Achilles was just some dude who whined all the time or stood brooding on the sidelines saying, "Man, if I were in that battle, because I'm like mostly immoral apparently, except for the whole heel thing, I guess." No, Homer was way too smart to do something as foolish as that. He found a balance in Achilles' cockiness as well as his evident humanity. When developing the personality or personalities of your protagonist, remember that you are creating a person. Though their morals should be decided early on, as part of their character development, they will encounter situations where they will both grow and gain knowledge. Use this as an opportunity to expand on their philosophies, personality, and overall development. While I have said that maintaining consistency with the character is important, that does not mean that they have to be stale, unchanging, and just generally weird throughout your entire tale. Another great example would be Battlefield Earth, where we follow Johnny Goodboy Tyler. He begins as a youth living in a remote village in the mountains. However, when his curiosity gets the best of him, he opts to leave his remote village and venture out into the world, completely ignoring the dangers of the quote-unquote monsters that have taken over his planet. Thus, he's captured by one of these quote-unquote monsters, who is actually an alien, and is forced into slavery. Johnny does his best to make the most of it, and winds up gaining an excess of knowledge both about the invaders as well as what had happened to humanity and the planet. Eventually, he develops into a great leader who forms a rebellion to overthrow the otherworldly oppressors. He begins as a naive boy with innate curiosity, and through many trials, develops into a leader. The reader of the book can relate to Johnny's curiosity and his care for his fellow man. A bad example of this, however, is Bella Swan from Twilight, specifically in the movies. Bella is a two-dimensional teenage girl who moves to a new town. There she meets a very aloof, pale, weird dude named Edward. For whatever reason, she starts to fall for him. When she discovers he is a superpowered, immortal vampire, she has an obscure reaction. Rather than do what any rational human being would do and panic, Bella essentially begs to become a psychopathic, murderous monster herself. There's no real growth with her, just a lot of whining and ridiculously cheesy dialogue. I highly recommend you write characters that feel the opposite of Bella Swan, again, mostly in the movies. That is to say, human. With that said, it is important you take lessons from all the characters, the good and the bad ones. Research them and read their stories, and find what they mean to you. Of course, not just these characters, but characters from your favorite literary works, and even from people you know. Take these concepts and mold them into your own character identity. At the end, I am sure you will find highlights in each protagonist and add to their relatability. Speaking of which, you gotta make them relatable. As I have said, The protagonist essentially serves as the bridge between the reader and the story. Oftentimes, they are the voice leading your reader through the world you have created and have the duty of portraying it accurately and efficiently. In order to do that, the reader must be attached to the protagonist in some way. I believe that having the lead character be relatable is the best way to do that. Being a relatable character is not limited to sharing religious views, race, environment, or even personality necessarily. If you are able to manage those, it is of course a bonus. However, these things are not what fundamentally define a person. This is why character development is so important. It is the struggle that will help the reader become attached. Showing your protagonist remain stoic during tragedy or war looks fantastical, but isn't very relatable. It is their inner dialogue, their reactions, how they overcome struggle, and their interactions with others that make them seem real and or human. Putting the protagonist in even an alien situation, yet having them react in a human way, is an excellent way to make them relatable. For example, let's say the protagonist is about to go into an interview or give a presentation, not unlike this one. It would be wise to relay their nervousness, perhaps have them fumble during their setup. Show the audience that they are a person with similar emotions to themselves. To the point of how this is important, the best kind of stories are ones where you feel a kindred spirit with the main character. It does not have to reflect your life verbatim, or at all really. What you are looking for is a sense of adventure and a motive or mindset that you feel you yourself would hold. Be it a larger-than-life superhero saving millions with laser eyes, or a small hobbit going on a journey, a protagonist should depict a person with ideals synonymous with your audience concept of good. And just to add on a few more relatable attributes that you may wish to include in your main character, I recommend you have them, have a good sense of humor, a sense of humility. If you're looking at writing more of a teen or young adult novel, growing up awkwardness is always a really great thing to tack on. Have them take moments to assess situations and give the reader the inner dialogue to have a better feel of the character. Show them reacting to tragedy in a realistic way where the reader can be like, I've had something like that happen, or I know someone that has, and this is exactly how I'd be. That gives them a connection to the character. And having them want to right a wrong is always an excellent way to bring the reader in to the character you're trying to develop. In conclusion, to best capture your audience, create a morally good, charismatic, and relatable character with which you yourself can empathize and find similarities with. Have them struggle and generate realistic ways in which they can overcome those struggles. Avoid alienating your audience by creating a protagonist who is good all the time. And finally, have fun, because if you are, so is your audience. This has been Jared Hill working with the North Bay Public Library as part of the North Bay Writers Club workshops. Thank you so much for your time today, and take care.
NBPL Podcasts is a production of the North Bay Public Library. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Also, if you know someone who might be interested in this series, please share this with them. Thanks to the North Bay Writers Group for sharing their time and talents in this series. If you'd like to learn more about this group, there is a link to their Facebook group in the show notes. Follow the North Bay Public Library on Facebook and connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at North_Bay PL.